Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by John Bullock. John, thank you so much for being with me today.
My pleasure, Lewis, and thank you for asking me.
No worries. And as always, we shall kick it off with, John, in your own words, what makes you a man?
I don't know. In this day and age, I suppose you've got to be so careful about what you say. And I'm 60 years of age, so my understanding may not equate to the things that we get out on the media. But what makes me a man is I'm a great believer in being a good role model for my kids, and I think that's really something that I like to live by. So, firstly and foremost, I would say that, and secondly, being a provider for the family.
Okay, it's short and sweet, and some may say a little bit more of a traditional answer, but yeah, it's such a great question. I always like the laughable pause at the beginning that it brings before people answer it. So, John, in your own words, why don't you describe a little bit about what it is that you do?
Sorry, Lewis, that question was completely lost there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So, in your own words, describe what it is that you do.
Okay, I'm a motivational coach and a motivational speaker. So what I try to do is unlock a key and bring you out of yourself so you can live a more fulfilled life.
Amazing. And when someone gets into that sort of space, there's usually a story behind it. So, what's your story and how did you get into it?
Okay, well, just to sort of give it a quick bio, up to the age of 25, I was involved in combat sport, and so I was a Thai and kickboxer. I had 34 fights, 27 wins, not a bad record. I was British champion, and some of the people you may know is a guy called Oliver Harrison, because he was Amir Khan's professional boxing trainer. He perhaps gave me the hardest fight I ever had in Liverpool in the mid 1980s, and we did 5 rounds there. And my last fight being in Miami in 1988, and I had a fantastic fight, and it became my last fight, not because of because it was a bad fight. I had a spectacular fight. I had a first round knockout. It could have gone better than it did do for me at that moment in time. And I just felt as I lost my passion, and I needed to move on. So that happened. But I'll just tell you a quick story, because one of the things that happened is that as I'd finished that fight, I was fighting in the Marriott Hotel, and I got invited over to meet Mr. Marriott of the Marriott Hotels to come over and have a word with me. He recognised my accent straight away, and he said to me, been to Liverpool many a time, because he loved racehorsing. And so he knew Aintree Racers, the biggest steeplechase race there is in the whole world. He knew it, he'd been there. And I ended up spending 9 months with Mr. Marriott, driving him up down the east coast of America. And taking them to horse stables and staying in the best hotels, and it was a fantastic experience. You imagine going to his house, which was in Bal Harbour Village. It was over the Rickenbacker Causeway. It was an absolutely fantastic experience. And of course, I had the opportunity to have one-to-ones with him. And sometimes during the conversation, we may talk about business. And he gave me the what I consider the best business lesson that I ever had in my life, as I was talking to him in the car. And he said to me, John, he said, I nearly lost my hotels many a time. He said, and the thing that kept me going, the thing that kept me going through it all, through the dark days, through my difficult times, he said, was I came up with this inspired, almost like divinely inspired ideas. I realized all my hotels were located next to massive airports like Miami, New York, wherever they were. He had the Marriott hotels. He said, and when I don't know if you're old enough to remember, Lewis, but if you got on a plane in the 80s, obviously you won't be old enough for that. Maybe the 90s, or when you got on the plane, certainly in the 70s, 80s, and the early 90s, you had a meal. It
Yeah.
didn't matter how long the flight was, you got a meal. He said, and what happened is that these companies, these airlines were building these big offsite sites to make ready these meals. He said, and I had kitchens that were only busy in the morning, afternoon, and dinner time. He said, and I went to them and said, look, forget about your capital costs and all your distribution costs. He said, I'm already at the airport and I've got the facilities already. I can reduce your cost dramatically. And he struck up great deals with all these airlines. He said, and it was that keeping his kitchens going 24 hours a day that kept his business going. And it's something that I took with me, because this is the important message he said to me, Lewis. He said to me, he said, John, there's no business book written about that, because the idea was never there. There was no blueprint to go to. It was a bit like the Wright brothers. When
Yeah.
they discovered that when they wanted to fly a plane, there was nothing they went to. He said, I was divinely inspired. He said, and sometimes that's when the best business advice comes. And so I had a great time, and I'd listened to stories from this guy continually all the time. Came back, went to, like a lot of people do. I had a guy, I went to uni, there was a guy who was a law lecturer, and he wanted me to help train his guys in mixed martial arts, was just starting in 1919. He said, come down. He said, and help train my guys. He wanted me to fight for him. But I ended up taking a degree, taking a various job. But I found that I ended up in a job in a local authority. I didn't like it for three years. It just didn't resonate with me. And when I had decided, I just got up one day and just said, look, I've had enough. I'm going. I'm out of here. And I ended up teaching. And then after teaching, again, I was training into being an accountant. And I passed that as well. And then I got this call of this guy who ended up being the manager of Jimmy White, the snooker player. And all of a sudden, these doors began to open, which is a theme I want to talk to you about, or certainly bring up, Lewis, with regards to following what speaks to your heart and trying to connect with it. Because that's a real strong thing for me. And point being is that this world hole opened up for me. I was meeting people again, and I ended up looking after their properties for 25 years and selling that property business in 2018. And now I'm using all this collective experience of whether I was competing in sport or from my property background, from my business background, and I'm using that to help motivate people and moving forward.
It's a great story, John. What I would love to ask you is, how did you have essentially the balls to go and do different things? Because the norm was pick a career and go for the gold watch, right? So you were very much out of the box early on. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that is the essence of I often talk to people about, because I talk to people now, and they'll often speak to me about an unfulfilled life, especially when you get to your mid-40s. And you suddenly realise the runway ahead is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter, and you're in a situation where you're thinking about the value that you're bringing to your own life, never mind to somebody else's life, and whether what you're doing is actually fulfilling you. And people normally have two sorts of blockages that they have. One of them is that, yeah, they're unhappy, they don't like what they do, and the second one is they're really terrified of change, so they don't want to make the change. What I found in my life is that if I found no joy in what I was doing, in other words, if I didn't wake up and feel passionate about what I was doing, I was prepared to move on. Regardless, I mean, the job I took in the local authority was the first time in my life I had experienced a regular wage coming in. I could have easily dropped that for the security, but I realised after just under 3 years that it just wasn't doing it for me. And I often quote again, you'll be far too young to remember, but there was an actress called Joyce Grenfell, and she appeared in all the St. Trinian's movies in the late 40s and early 50s. with Alistair Sim. Now, you will know Alistair Sim because every Christmas Day, Christmas Carol comes on and he's Scrooge. So everyone knows Alistair Sim. But if you think about the old black and white Centrinians movies, then Joyce Grenfell was the actress with a very sharp, dark haircut and a fringe. And she was very slim, and but she had a marvelous saying. And she would say, there's no such thing as the pursuit of happiness, but there is the discovery of joy. And for me, trying to find joy in what I'm doing, expressing in what I'm doing, was very important to me. And so yeah, I let go of the security side. I'm in a very fortunate position now. I don't even have to do what I'm doing now. I am doing it purely out of love for what it is that I do, and I'm getting great feedback. You know, I've done talks for sort of real premium groups where there's some really big hitters within these groups. I've done them for Seiko 250, which is a FTSE 250 company, you know, motivational talks and getting the best out of their staff, you know, and enjoying what I'm doing, you know. But I need to emphasize that what I do now is purely out of joy. I really do enjoy doing it.
That's a nice way of. I like the word joy rather than like happiness. It's like weirdly they're the same word, but they also have very different meanings, right? Like it's interesting. One of the blockers that you mentioned was sort of fear of change, and I imagine that's the biggest one for a lot of people because of, let's say, comfort and the security of maybe a well-paid job. How What's your suggestions around that? How do you start to make a change?
Well, you know, I had a meeting yesterday, or a one-to-one, as people call it now, and it was with a sort of old friend, you know, and same type of thing, you know. It was the same type of thing again. One was that I'm a bit unhappy about what I'm doing now. I don't like what I'm doing, and I realise I'm not getting any younger. I've got to say, I must be about 15 years older than this person, but I've known them for about 30 years, and they're telling me that they're unhappy and and they don't know what to do about it. And I hear that such a lot. Well, I always give perhaps three bits of advice in a situation such as that. And number one is start making small little changes. They don't have to be big. So if you go to work in a certain way, go on another route, even though if it's a little bit inconvenient. Start to make small little changes, and that's incredibly important because, as you know, the synapses within your brains, you're literally growing your brains by actually doing that. And that obviously becomes really helpful because the more you do it and you make these changes, and when you change and you've got to get to a certain place by a certain time and you go a different route, you're unsure about the timing, and all of a sudden, you know, you're a little bit unsettled and you're going into a place that you don't often know too well. And it really, that's your practice, that's your training run. You're beginning to do it. It's not massive change, but it's small change that can lead to something else. And the second one I think is really important. I always say to good people say, I mean, Yale University will tell you 95% of what you do in life, 95% is through a pattern, a routine. You wake up and do the same thing every morning. You go to work the same way. When you go to a party and there's the last cookie, are you the person that always picks the last cookie? I know that, you know, if there's a bottle of wine and you know there's just a little bit more to the glass, so I'll knock that bit back and throw a bit more in. Are you the person that does that? It's a routine, it's a habit. And I always say to people, start by breaking up new routines at the weekend. You know, even if you go to different places they don't have to be really far, but go to somewhere that you keep meaning to do. And the idea is that you slowly begin to inspire yourself. You go somewhere, you meet some different people, and you get used to doing it, and you begin to enlarge your range, the people that you're meeting, and sometimes you just don't know when the doors will open.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what podcast it was on, but he was taught it was some personal trainer, and he had a guy who was extremely overweight, and he said he was one of his most successful clients because his first 6 months he just went to the gym every day, he didn't necessarily work out. He just made the effort to go. So he would just go every day so that it became normal for him to go to the gym. And more times out of not, he was working out at the gym. But the first thing he did was he made sure he went to the gym every day for 6 months so that it became normal. So yeah, it's a little change is a good starting point, most definitely. Do you see a synergy between sport and success?
Definitely, 100%. I, I, I put. I mean, it's how you measure success. I'm not the richest person in the world, or anything, but by far of it, but I need a good life. I practically do what I want to do on a daily basis. Um, so it's how you measure success. I would turn around and ask people to really think about that. I think when you get to your mid 40s, if you had a 60-minute clock and you looked at the first 20 minutes, let's say 0 to 25 years of age, and you wrote down all the things you did, you went to school, you met people, you physically grown, you went from a toddler to a mature person, you started to grow relationships, and you look from 26 to 50. Now, most people around 45 have really sort of made, in other words, they've had a career and really started to develop themselves, and they find themselves in a position whereby they're not chasing work. People need their expertise. They're coming to them in that next 20 minutes of your full life. At 44, people are knocking at your doors because they need your experience. But something else happens at 44, 45. You begin to really question yourself as regards to what is it in life that makes me feel fulfilled, and am I really feeling fulfilled in what I do? And I think we normally pick two things, two routes. Some people listen to it about the calling that they get, and then other people deny it to themselves. And of course, when you deny it to yourselves, it's almost like a slow death, by a death of 1,000 cuts over many years, that you begin to, because you've not followed what it is within your heart, or the thing that sing to you. And ironically, here's the thing that I always explain to people is this: when that calling comes and you really begin to ask and question yourself what you do, that is, in my opinion, the divine trying to connect with you. It's the divine within you trying to connect with you and trying to guide with you. And the more you deny it to yourself, the harder your fight will become and the struggle to get up and every morning. So just by embracing that connection and making those small movements, you will find success or the joy in what you do. And you asked about sport. Well, the way I explained it is, do you remember Toval and Dean?
Yeah, I know of them.
And Valerio. He did about, I think it was the 1984 Olympics, and he
Yeah.
did this fantastic dance, this ice skating routine. And of course, we all looked at them and we were saying it was fantastic, but we were waiting for them to trip or to fall. So you're drawn into their energy. You're drawn into the complexity of what it is that they're doing. But it's not the complexity that draws you in. It's the simplistic way in which they perform it. It's the thing that draws you in. You get drawn to it. You can't take your eyes off it. It's the energy is all consuming. But for the individual that's doing the performance, they don't need you. Sounds terrible, this. They don't need you. What they need is the challenge. And what it is, the challenge is that when they realize they made it, like a musician sings a wrong note, but they carry on singing. They may realize there was a slight error in the movement. We may never have noticed it. They found a way of overcoming it. And that's where the joy comes from. So you're asking me, is there an alignment between success and joy? Then most definitely. And that's where it comes from. It's not from your plaudits. It's because you become so practiced in what you do. And you realize your joy comes from the ability that when you're challenged, you had it within you to overcome. And that's where sport is so important, because I took that recipe forward in my business life.
Okay, that's an interesting way of answering that question because most people will go down the competitive side of things and sort of say that having that edge and being competitive, but from what you're saying, it's not necessarily about doing sport from a competitive point of view. Is that right?
No, I think here and I was as a Thai kickboxer, and I 34 professional fights, and I have to say that every time I stepped into the ring, I never wanted to hurt anyone. That was never my motivation, and I've often thought about now when I look back, and I suddenly realised that the same in business is that what I wanted to do is that I wanted to perform the technique that I was doing good. I wanted to look good as by what I was doing. That meant I had to be skilled and practice in what I was doing. That became the important element in me, the ability to practice and to be able to execute it to the best of my ability. And that's what I train for, and constantly all the time. And the same applied to anything within business. And that means sometimes I don't know, I haven't explained this to you, Lewis, but I've written a book called Find Your Flow, Take the Path of Mastery, which encompasses a lot of what we're talking about now. And I want to say it's available on Amazon if you're interested. It talks about how people evolve and they improve as an individual. But what you need to do, from my perspective, the way I learned, and I did the same in business, is this: is you need to be able to. So if you learn a routine, whatever it is, you need to be able to take it apart and build it back up again. And if that improves what you're doing, then that's great. If it doesn't, you take it right back to where you were and you begin again and you start taking it back. So all the time you're looking for small improvements consistently all the time. And that's the way I went about mine. It was about development. So it might have been development of the team to make them more motivated on the call, but it was about practice and the way that we did it, about taking it apart and putting it back together to overcome our own challenges.
Yeah, so more questioning everything, right? Not the search for perfectionism, but the search for improvement is the way to sort of go about both of those things, and that's where
Well,
the
it certainly was my way, and
yeah,
I found it a successful recipe for me.
amazing. So you've just touched on the book, and you've also touched on sort of divine energy and those sort of things. What is it for you that you think that that's an important thing, or you think that that's something that people need to look for, and that's their starting point?
Well, definitely. And the analogy I'd use on this, Lewis, is I think we've all done that, and I've been guilty of doing this myself in the past. And then as we look at someone, a mate phones you up and says, "Oh, by the way, I've just bought this new car." Oh, bloody hell, that's a good car he's got, or I've just moved into this bigger house, or I've just been, I'm going on this holiday, and you're looking at it and think, my God. So what you begin to do is that you emulate what they're doing, or maybe what they're doing or the way they've gone about it. But ironically, what they're finding very easy is because they're passionate about what they're doing. But you're dropping your passion and you're trying to reproduce or emulate what it is, the success that they've had. That was right for them, but perhaps not necessarily right for you. So what you're trying to do is that you put your energy towards this thing that this person's doing because you want that holiday, you want that car, and you start doing the same things that they advised you to do. You start doing them, and all of a sudden you're finding it difficult. You haven't got the energy to provide for something that you do not find passionate. So unlocking what motivates you, unlocking your true passion, listening to that calling inside, that divine calling that's guiding, that's telling you that you need the changes. You've got to take the time out. You've got to look for them. And trying to emulate someone that you consider to be successful is not the shortcuts to success you thought it was going to be. What it will be is this: something that saps your energy and to produce the same results that they did, you will find it a lot harder. You've got to find your own way. It's a bit like that book by that Brazilian author, The Alchemist. And have you read that book at all, Lewis?
I've not. No, no, it's not one that I've read.
Oh, I certainly would recommend it. But essentially, this guy is trying to find out what his true passion is, and where he goes, the people he meets, the wealth he creates, and the wealth that he loses. And then it comes to this understanding that where his real wealth is, and it's taken that time to understand this. I firmly believe that we're here for the journey. And it's understanding that journey and the way that it unfolds. And there's a time that you're going to be frustrated, and there's a time you're going to find success. There's a time things are going to go slow, but there's a time that things are going to come like 7 buses are all going to come at the same time, and you feel like you've won the lottery. These are all processes that you need to experience and go through. You need to do that. Some of the things I'm saying may not always resonate with everybody because it's not right for them. And I keep dwelling in the sort of age 44, 45, as I'm a firm believer that's the age we really begin to question. We're so driven by what society tells us to do. We're taken by, you're meant to do this, go to college, go to uni, get this job, do this, buy this car, get money back, whatever it is. You do this, and we end up adopting it. But around 44, 45, when people are knocking your door down and need your experience and your expertise, we're at a stage where we begin to question things. We've looked what we've done with our lives. We shouldn't be too hard on ourselves because everyone's going to do this. But what we should do is listen.
Yeah, it's I'm a big believer in ebbs and flows of life. I think they're really important. I think if you're trying to build the perfect life or the Instagram life, let's say, that a lot of people showcase, that's never going to be achievable, because if you don't have downs, you can't have ups, right? It's got to be yin and yang, right? I am a big believer in that, most definitely. I guess
100%.
I guess my question to you is, because you're sort of using that 40, 45 as an age. I personally, it came to me a little bit earlier. So for me, I post COVID probably is another element of it. I sort of went through this discussion with myself and started to have that. Do you think that that's something that might shift? Do you think people will start to have these conversations earlier? And also, if someone's listening that isn't 45, how do they start having this conversation now?
Well, it's like me having my son is 24 this year, and he's trained to be a lawyer. And I have a fantastic relationship with him. But I'm absolutely sure that if I start to have this conversation about what's to come and everything, it probably wouldn't resonate with him at this moment in time because the time's not right for me. I believe we have to go through certain experiences and then to fully appreciate what is happening to us and listening to that calling, because there's an inevitability it will happen to him, and I think it happens to everybody. The question is whether we choose to listen to it, and those people that don't listen to it, they're doing a real disservice to themselves. Again, something that manifests within them. It's almost as if they go to war with themselves. And what I mean by that, because they end up being so unhappy in what they do, they think this is life. So they eat wrongly. They don't look after their sort of earth suit that they're going to need to really move them forward. They sort of let go of these things because they think, well, it's not really worth it. And I think it's a real dangerous. Real dangerous route to take. I think once you've got this calling and the calling's always there. The trouble of it is how loud it is. And from my experience around 44, when I speak to a lot of other people, I did this time clock in one of these speeches, and the people within this room were real big hitters. So it was in the Stretton Hotel near Warrington, and to give an example of within the room, one person had sold one of his businesses for 250 million. And I was told that within this room that if I don't get it right, that they won't be scared to tell me that what they're listening to, that they don't like it. And when I did this clock with them, this thing, we were talking about, the 60-minute clock, first 20 minutes, all these things that we go through, and the next 20 minutes, it's where we really begin to ask ourselves, especially around 44, So from 26 to 50 years, we're really developing our career. We're going through it. And then once people start knocking on our doors, we're making money really easy. Then we really begin to, I think at 44, we really begin to ask what it is we're doing. So I think everyone will experience it. Is it necessary to be an alien? No, because you have to have the experience to go through it. How can you understand being really good at what you're doing and have the experience to do it? Have people knocking on your doors and really needing you and making money, and then saying to yourself, actually, though, although I'm good at this, is this really what I need to do, or can I do something else that's going to fulfill me?
That is probably the answer that most people didn't want to hear, but it's also a good answer because I think for me and for a lot of the people that listen and a lot of people that consume social media, it's all about getting rich quick, getting in shape quick, getting to this lifestyle quick. Whereas you're giving people the license to test and fail and try things, and then only then will you know whether you were right or wrong at this sort of peak in your life. And I think it's refreshing and it's a nice thing to hear because it allows you to, me personally, it allows me to breathe and actually think about the next steps rather than panicking and thinking I've got to get to where I need to get to quickly. So yeah, it was probably not what people wanted to hear, but it's the nice thing. So I guess between now and 44, it's that, right? It's testing and doing things.
I think that's absolutely right. You should experience things, and you should allow yourself to fail because we're not going to be good at everything that we do, and it's only through that fail that we probably learn that this is not the right route for me. And I still experience failure now, and I just accept it for what it was. This is it's just not the right route for me. But the route that I'm generally felt that I would say I commit myself to 90% of my time to is, I'm really am fulfilled in what I'm doing, but I still do something differently because I need to say, can I improve what I'm doing? And if I can't, then I'll just take it right back to where I was.
So for people in that phase right now, how do you deal with failure?
How do you deal with that is a great question. Look, I would be a liar to turn around and say that when I was younger, it hit me harder. I hadn't had the experience. If I got up and failed now and I fell down, that was just one of those things, and I would just carry on with what I was doing. But when I was younger, and if I had failed in a fight or whatever, then I think I did give myself a hard time, and if when I was in business and had I made a wrong mistake in business, I think I gave myself a hard time. But over a period of time, I suddenly realized that what is success? I think success is doing more things right than what you do wrong. And I suddenly had this realization that I was experiencing more success than what I was doing wrong. And then I realized that, well, actually, it's actually told me something that, the left turn I took wasn't perhaps right and I should carry on going straight on. And I think as I've got older, I've learned to accept that more. And I think I sometimes find myself talking to my son and I turn around and say, don't be so hard on yourself. Allow yourself to make a mistake. Allow yourself to be wrong.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that because a lot of parents want their children to learn from their mistakes, but you want your children to make mistakes and learn from them, which again is refreshing.
Well, absolutely did. I read a book once, and I can't remember what the book is, so forgive me on that. But I remember the question he asked his kids every day. It always stuck by me. And it's the question, as soon as at breakfast, he always says to them, "How many mistakes are you willing to make today?" Because he knew that at the end of it, you're going to learn through the process. You're going to learn by what you've done.
I think that's the most important part of it, right? Though learning from it, because there is a
Yeah.
negative spiral that you can go down by making the wrong choices.
Well, isn't it almost becomes a routine and a habit? And then you're absolutely right. And it's that kind, to keep doing the same thing and to expect a different result. Then I would agree with you. But normally when things go wrong in that way, you normally find a person that repeats the thing over and over again because in their mind they've said to themselves that I need to be doing this, and it just wasn't for them for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you found a lot of role models throughout your career, and a lot of people that you could speak to, and like quite famous people that people would love to sort of have as mentors. How did you find them, or was it not a case of finding them? It was just a case of here's the road.
Well, I think that's Lewis is another great question. I didn't find them. I think what I did right was this: is that I didn't settle for something that was not making me joyful. In other words, with the experience I got from when I was training was that I had to practice, and get better and better and better, and I felt that fulfilling within myself. And if I was going to work and I was learning something, but I was not feeling fulfilled, then I realised I was going through the motion. And the more I turned around and said, you know what, I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to keep moving now until I find where. And sometimes there was, I have to be that, I left this job down in London. It was the first well-paid job, and then to suddenly have nowhere, I took a real gamble, and sometimes times were hard. And then I trained to be a teacher. I qualified. I was offered a teacher job, and I realised I didn't want to do it. There were big, difficult decisions, but I'm glad I kept that path because eventually, through this one chance meeting, this guy opened this whole world up for me again, and it was like the repeat of what I'd experienced about when I was competitive in the kickboxing. I was meeting people again. Doors began to open. Opportunities were created, and that's because I failed and failed and failed until I found something that I felt was right for me at that moment in time. And Lewis, I also have to say that, after doing that business for 25 years, after 20 years, I went through the same thing again. There's no age to this thing. I suddenly decided this isn't doing it for me anymore. So just before COVID, I decided, it took me 5 years to prepare the business up for sale and to get it sold. But I did it because, again, I was finding no passion in what I was doing.
So you're obviously a father. You have a son,
I have
and
a daughter too, yeah.
amazing. So I would just love to touch on my first question, which is about what it means to be a man. What do you see that's changed for both your son and your daughter in regards to what it means to be a man slash masculinity?
Um, it's interesting because I've got a daughter, and I've got a daughter as well, and I think I don't want to hit much by that insight, but she has more of my characteristics about that in many ways. So especially as a younger person, um, so I've I've not looked at it in the sense that I wanted to give them a certain skill set, and what I felt was really important for me as a parent was this. So my son is involved in combative sports himself now, so he understands that to improve, he's got to commit, practice, and find improvements in what he is doing. My daughter plays saxophone and she reads music, and she's a level 7 musician. There's only 8 altogether, so she's totally convinced. Like reading another language, and the it's great to listen to her play music. My important point is this: is that there would be times that she probably would have felt like throwing the saxophone down, but she kept with it, and she learned how to overcome the problems. And I think, as a parent, what I wanted to do for my kids, for my children, was give them the skill set that they realise that not everything is going to work out the way you had expected it, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means it's not the way you had expected it to be. But to have the skill set that when things do go hard, is to have the resilience to move forward by keep practicing, by keep doing what it is you do. And so you learn to overcome. And it's that skill set rather than anything that I'm glad my daughter can play the saxophone because she's gone through it. So when she has a difficult situation, she will learn, she will have the tool set to reach down to move forward within her life. With regards to the masculinity of it all, I think, when I look at Asian cultures and in particular when I visit somewhere like Thailand, uh, and you see how hard the women work and the way they look after the parents and everything like that. It's they are probably some of the hardest working people that I've ever seen in my life. Um, but they play a role. They play a role within their life, within their society, and it's for me it sort of works, and I see what the guys are doing, and I think personally there's certain things that as a sex that when we look at, you probably think, there's not many, I suppose, colleges for girls that want to be bricklayers or colleges for girls that want to. I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm just saying there probably isn't a lot of it because the
Yeah.
demand isn't that great, and I suppose. As I listen to my daughter, she's never actually said to me, "Oh, I know some girls may want to be a mechanic and do things like that." I've got no problem with that at all if that's what they want to do. But I don't see an awful lot of it, and I wonder from my own personal point of view, is whether they've been sort of socialized to think in the same way, and whether they are truly following what is their passion. And if they're following their passion, that's great. Because for me, that's the only thing that really is important, is to be able
Yeah.
to take hold of your passion.
Yeah. I think to sort of confirm what you're saying, in Scandinavia, there was a complete overhaul in allowing people to do exactly what they wanted to do. And over the last few years, it's migrated to the roles that you'd imagine people to choose anyway, based on gender. They allowed full autonomy, and it still sort of went majority of men into STEM and the majority of women into some sort of healthcare profession and that sort of side of things. So it has been proven on that side. I guess another way to rephrase that question for you is your ethos is a little bit more equality based. So it allows for open thinking and testing and trying. Do you think that the way that men and women are sort of perceived in this day and age allows it's easier for people to sort of follow your ethos?
Um, Great question, Lewis. Personally, I didn't really see any dichotomy in time from a time perspective, whether it's easier or harder now.
Yeah.
I've never really sort of looked at it that way. We're faced with challenges wherever we grow up in life and whatever time period we are. And if I look at the last 20 years, when you look at social media, certainly when I was at school, I didn't have to put up with somebody putting a post on Facebook that I perhaps that I didn't like, So during time periods, we're all faced with different challenges, and I suppose, as Rudolph Kipling said, it's the way we decide to face those challenges when they come to us, And I don't see when it comes to this. I think there are probably there's men and female. I think there's probably certain roles that maybe men are more inclined to because they're naturally stronger. But there are more roles that women are probably because they have different instincts to men. I don't think these are negative things. I think these are just positive things. And I've in my life as I've gone through life, I have I have found that most women will at some stage in their life will want to have children. Not saying all women, but most women will want to have children. They'll want to go through that experience, So I think, I suppose what I'm saying is that there are certain things that are within us that go beyond roles that we play in life, because they're just part of us.
Yeah, it's a nice way of putting it. So, in regards to you, John, where can people find you? What have you got out there that people can sort of get if they were interested in things that you're saying? Yeah, over to you.
Okay, so you can find me on www.painpointcoach.co.uk. And on that website, there are some free online motivational courses that you can do. There are other, obviously, online courses that you may want to do. I do a lot of community work, so I do free beach boxing classes on the beach, one in New Brighton and the other in Crosby. So they're all based in the northwest. So we just turn up very early on the morning. It's mainly about mobility. There's no contact. It's mainly just about mobility and getting people training in the fresh air, connecting with nature, and working on their mobility. It's as simple as that, and maybe learning a skill along the way. So I do those things. I have the book out, which I told you about, and mainly what I do is all about motivational stuff. So motivational coaching and motivational speaking.
Amazing, John. I could talk to you for hours. I imagine there's an infinite amount of stories in there to go over. But for now, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Lewis. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.